In this video we're going to be talking about relays. And how I'd like to introduce relays is by talking about a typical electrical problem you might run into. Let's say you're trying to regulate the temperature of a room, and so you're given a heater. This heater takes a lot of electricity. How you're going to regulate the temperature is using a controller, or you might think of this as a thermostat. And what it's going to do is input your temperature and output an on or off voltage depending on whether or not it needs to turn on and off your heater. The problem arises when your controller, which is probably outputting a very small amount of voltage, let's say 5 volts, it's nowhere near enough to power this heater. So how are you going to turn on and off this heater with a very small amount of electricity? Well, the solution might be found in using a relay. A relay is an electrically operated switch, and what that means to you is you can take your heater, which remember requires a lot of electricity, plug it into the power source it needs, let's say an outlet, and control whether or not it turns on and off using the small amount of voltage coming out of your controller. You can even think of it as relaying the on-off signal to the heater. Some of the things you want to keep in mind when buying a relay is the amount of load, or how much electricity is going to this heater. Relays can be kind of expensive, and you don't want to burn it out the first time you plug it in. Another thing you want to keep in mind when selecting a relay is the control voltage. Again, your controller is going to be using a very small amount of electricity to turn on and off a large amount of electricity, so you want to make sure that if you're using, let's say, 5 volts, that's enough to trigger this on and off in the relay. Here's kind of what a typical relay might look like. Some other things that you may not think about is ensuring that you have a fuse. The instructions will tell you the kind of fuse you need to use after you buy the relay. And it's a great way to ensure that there's a power surge or you mess up doing your circuit, that you don't destroy your relay. Another thing that you might not think about is the size of the relay. Relays are pretty big compared to other circuitry stuff. If you compare it to the size of a resistor, it's pretty huge. So you want to make sure you have the space for that in your circuit. And finally, solid-state relays especially get very hot, and as you can kind of see on the bottom of this, you have a metal piece to sort of dissipate the heat. So if you're going to be using this all the time, you want to make sure that it doesn't overheat.